First of all, Tim is, for those of you that came, we did do a little bit of a call at a meeting last March, I think it was about a week before lockdown at Whistle Bear. So some of you guys from the UW team came, some of our kids from Whistle Bear were there. And so we're hoping to pick up on that today. So Tim is a member of the Golf Ontario Hall of Fame, if you guys didn't know that. Winner of the Lauren Rubenstein Media Award. Was that just last year, Tim, or the year before that you were inducted?
Yeah, that was, last year. Yeah, I got the news about a year ago. Yes.
Awesome. Tim also, he's the men's and women's head golf coach at the University of Guelph. He was a consultant author on The Feeling of Greatness, and I know that, Andrew, you are in the middle of reading that right now, I think.
Yeah.
Have you gone through it? Have you got through it yet, or are you still working your way through it?
No, I'm still reading it. Yeah.
Okay. You get to the good parts yet? You want to know how it ends?
No.
Okay. Well, we won't tell you then. Okay. And Tim also has the host a show on iTunes called Swing Thoughts with Howard Glassman. That I think you're 100 and some episodes deep into that, Tim, now, right?
Yeah, actually it was 6 years, 154 episodes deep. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I believe they can watch it. Is it through iTunes, or where can they tune into that, Tim?
Anywhere you get your podcasts.
Okay, and it's worth the listen. It's mostly all just based on sort of the mental aspect of the game. There's not much on technique and those kind of things, so it's a pretty good listen. And if you tune in, you can find me on there 3 times, poking fun at Tim and Howard as well. So he also does that. And then I'm sure there's a little known fact that you guys won't know is Tim plays bass in a punk band. Nobody's laughing about that, Tim, so it must be believable.
It's because they don't know what punk is. That's okay.
Yes, one of these things is not like the other. Okay, so and then Tim is a performance coach as well. So what I'd like to do is welcome everybody here today. We do have a variety of players tuned in here. We have Cougar from the national and Golf Canada's national team, and Eastern Michigan University that's down there in COVID quarantine right now. Who else do we have? We've got Ethan from my University of Waterloo team. He's sitting in Michigan right now. He's from the Detroit area. He's our 6'7" starting guy for University of Waterloo.
6'8" now.
6'8" now. He's still growing. Okay, awesome. And then we have, some of the kids from our team as well. Tara's with us as well. So that being said, I would like to introduce Tim O'Connor. And if you guys do have any questions at all, if you don't want to just fire them out, go ahead and put them on chat, and I'll see if we can get those answered. If not, there'll be about 15 minutes at the end that you could ask questions as well. But feel free to ask anything you want. So when Tim and I looked at this, what we wanted to talk about, he said, what do you think would be a good subject? And I think for most players, when I look, especially if you're new to competition, it's probably that pre-tournament jitters a little bit. If you've been introduced to quite a bit of competition at a variety of different levels, that possibly there's still that first tee jitters. And then once you get out on the golf course, depending upon how the day is going, how do you handle yourself emotionally on the way around the golf course as well, so that we don't have those moments when we explode, and then by the time you sort of regain control of yourself, you've already you're 3 or 4 bogeys deep into it, or whatever it happens to be, and you feel like you're at the point of no return. So that being said, Tim's going to base a bit of his talk around that today. But again, any questions you have, feel free to just fire them out. Either put your hand up if you don't want to burst it out, or put it in chat and we'll address it. Okay, so that being said, Tim, it's all yours.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mike. Good to see most of you. Good to be here, and thanks again, Mike. For those of you who don't know, Mike and I became friends largely around Mo Norman. And what I really liked about Mike is that he looked at Mo Norman as a person first and a golfer second. So I always had so much respect for Mike, is that he cared so much about Mo as a man. And that's a really important thing. And so Mike, I just want to honor you for that. I always thought that was such a cool thing that you do. And that's why you do what you do. You care about people, and that's why you're doing this great work that you're doing with these players that you've assembled. And so thanks. So Mike and I were talking about, so what could we really talk about? And he already mentioned already, this pre-tournament nerves. And it happens to everybody. I don't care who you are. I'm feeling a bit nervous right now because I'm just getting...
Who gets nervous before the tournament? Nobody? Pretty much everybody, right?
Say if you don't have your hand up, you're a liar. Just saying.
Hate to tell you.
Exactly. So how does nervousness feel right now for me? Well, my heart is going a little bit faster than normal. I am aware that my hands are a bit sweaty. Yeah, I'm feeling a bit of tension in my shoulders and my arms. That's where I carry my tension, is in my shoulders. And yeah, my mind wants to go pretty quick. My mind wants to go, okay, Tim, make sure you cover this, you get this, and make sure you sound like you know what you're talking about, because you got all these people and you don't want to disappoint them and look like an idiot. So what do we feel like when we're getting ready for a tournament we care about? Well, a lot of that type of stuff goes on for us. And the problem is, or the challenge is, how do we channel that? How do we channel that energy and those things that are going on, that burst of adrenaline? How do we take advantage of that and actually make it work for us than against us? I'll tell you one thing that's interesting is that if you're able to draw on your skill that you've developed, the natural talent you have, and you have a ton of talent, just as a consequence of being a human being, you've got amazing talent. The challenge that happens to us is that we get caught and our body gets going pretty fast, and usually our thoughts get going pretty fast. And that's in essence when we get in our own way. You've probably heard that phrase before. Another way to look at it is self-interference. Yesterday I played great. I shot 72, let's say. I'm in a tournament and I'm 5 over after 3 holes. What's the difference? The difference is basically in how you're able to manage what's going on with you, how you adapt, and how in essence, manage is the word. You can't control your thoughts in the same way you cannot control your golf swing. You cannot control it. I don't care what anyone says. There's too many moving parts in your body, and the same with too much going on in our heads. But we can manage it. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start with a story. And I like stories because we can take the lessons from it and look at some of the tools. And when I'm telling a story, you're going through your own head anyways. It's like when you watch Harry Potter. When Harry Potter's going up against Lord Voldemort, the reason we're excited or scared or whatever is because we're actually thinking we are Harry Potter, because that's the way stories work. That's why they're so valuable in learning. So I'll launch into my story. So pretty good athlete as a kid, like a lot of you. I played hockey, but I was a forward for a while, but I always wanted to be a goalie. So in Bantam Minor, I finally became a goalie. Turned out I was pretty good. Bantam Major, I was really good. I won like the goalie award for lowest goals against average. Our team won our league championship, and then we won a city championship. And as happens, the coach of the AA team got wind of me, and he asked me to come out. And so I went to the tryouts. Holy crap, made the team. So I was a pretty good little goalie. Not a ton of experience, of course. Rep in minor midget. So I go into my first game. Well, let's just say it didn't go so well. I think it was 4 goals within 5 minutes. And basically, I couldn't control my nervousness. I was just a tense. I just couldn't move. And so really, I had proven, obviously, that I was a pretty darn good little goalie. Good enough that in tryouts and then in practices, he's going to start me in the first game. I couldn't manage my nervousness. I wasn't even aware of what was going on. So let's fast forward to golf. So in my club championship, I used to play at Spring Lakes near Stouffville. First round, I shoot 72. I'm the first round leader. First time I'd ever been a first round leader in any kind of championship. I'm a pretty good player. First time as a first round leader. Second round, I could barely find the club face. I think I shot something like 87 or something. Again, what happened? I was unable to master all the thoughts racing through my head and unable to feel what was going on in my body, and thus I was unable to access my golf swing. Same person who shot 72 the day before, but just couldn't navigate it. So another example, I could go to another story, and this is where I start to get a handle on what's going on. As Mike said, I do a podcast. Started doing it about 6 years ago. So as Mike explained, our podcast is generally about the mental side of golf. So my co-host, Howard, and I are usually like two guys kind of, at a bar or whatever, or in your living room, chatting about golf. Justin, Rory, Michelle, Jessica, whomever, just chatting about golf. And it's comfortable. I've been in golf for 30 years. I covered the PGA Tour. I've been at 7 Masters. I'm a golf guy. And I'm a golf coach. But I wasn't used to being on a podcast where I was being recorded and people are listening. So what he would do, we'd have these conversations, then he'd kind of turn it into Don Cherry's Coach's Corner, if you're old enough to know Don Cherry. I think most of you are. And he'd go, hey coach, when a player has this going on, what should they do? And here's what would happen for me. My chest and my throat would just clench. They would clench in fear. And I would start to stammer, and I'd be struggling to find an answer. Here's what was going on. I interpreted that situation as I better prove myself. I better show what the hell I know what I'm talking about. That I have something to offer from all this experience I've got. So what was happening, folks, is that I was doing what my clients come to me for. I was choking. I was choking. So I was a little bit confused about this because I'm supposed to be a mental performance coach, help people. I coach the University of Guelph golf team, all this stuff. So at the time, I was going through classes. They're called improvisational comedy. And anyways, check it out. If you never, I'm not going to go into it too much, but it's really interesting because you're challenged to create things on the spot. You have these scenes and you have to come up with lines on the spot. So it can be pretty nerve-wracking. Anyways, to keep the story somewhat on the tracks, I asked my teacher, what's going on here? She says, well, you're really just doubting yourself, and you're coming from this place of this old pattern of fear. When I was a goalie, when I first started playing goal, first round leader, I was not used to this situation. So I said, well, what do I do? She says, breathe. Just breathe. Really? Yeah. So the next time on our podcast, Howard did that thing. Hey, coach, what about this? I could sense myself tensing up, but I just breathed. In, out. Howard didn't even know I was doing it. And then I was able to just chill out, ground, and just, all right, that's okay. I'm not going to die here. And then whatever needed to come up, whatever piece of wisdom I had to offer, whatever advice, it just came out. And it was appropriate. Sometimes what I would say would be brilliant, rarely. Or average, or just okay. So here's what happened for me. Is that when I was able to connect and I was able to actually feel what was going on in me at the moment. Oh, I'm tense. And here's what happens when you become aware of what's going on. It actually goes away on you. When you're feeling tense, when you go on that first tee, This happens for everybody. Is you go on that first tee and you do a check-in. You go like, what am I paying attention to? I hope I don't duff it off the first tee and look like an idiot to my coach and all the players. You ask yourself, what am I paying attention to? Mike, you might want to take some notes that you could share for your players later or something. What am I paying attention to? The other piece is, what am I feeling in my body? What am I feeling in my body? And that's called the check-in. So you just stand there and go, oh, my head is thinking about all these things. Oh, if I check in, my hands are sweating, and when I hold the club, it's like I got a death grip. So what can you do? Just breathe in all seriousness. I know you hear this all the time, so it's almost like a cliche. People talk about this breathing thing. Here's what happens when you breathe. You connect with the present moment. You press pause on all those thoughts. You press pause on that inner voice that sometimes say, I hope you don't top it off the tee and you look like a jerk. You press pause on that voice that says, you played really crap in your last tournament. Better not the bed today. That inner voice. And everyone has that inner voice. Unfortunately, that inner voice is never helpful. I wish my inner voice would say, hey, Timmer, you got this. You're going to have a great round of golf today. Just relax. No, that inner voice is usually talking very mean things to me. So here's why it works. When you have all this stuff going on, fast heart rate, sweaty palms, loose feel of the club, and you can do this while you're playing as well. I'll get to more of that in a second. When you breathe, your body is in the present moment. So you're not thinking. Most of the thoughts that you have standing on that tee are in the future. I hope I don't hit it off this tee. I hope I don't shoot a million today. I hope I don't suck. We're in the future, which makes us more nervous and more afraid. We also think in the past. Oh, yesterday was bad. I had 4 3-putts. I couldn't do anything right. Hope that doesn't happen today. So you're either in the future or in the past. And that's where your nervousness comes from. It's fear. So how do we slow things down? How do we get the heart just to chill a little bit? How do we get that feeling back in our hands when we're holding the putter? You breathe. And that connects you to your body, which is always in the present moment. So I don't know if you guys will relate to this one, but there was a show called Star Trek. I don't know if in the Star Trek movies they do this. I don't know, do they do the beam me up thing in the latest Star Trek movies?
Yeah, they still do those.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, they do really cool stuff with phones, technology. Here we are doing this Zoom thing. Everyone's at their house, but we're all able to do this. Technology is amazing. But they can't do that beam me up thing yet, which is just a silly way of saying your body's always in the present moment. So when you're connected to your body, to your breathing, you're present. And when you're present, you're not worried about hitting your ball out of bounds off the first tee. You're not in a bunker on 14 thinking, oh, I hope I don't scull it like I did on 8. All that thinking is what keeps you in that place of fear, which is just another word for nervousness. So a thing I just want to add, it's okay to be nervous. It's actually a good thing. It means you care. You always want to feel nervous when you go to the first tee because it means this means something or you're in contention. The other piece I said is this: you can channel this energy to make your game better. You'll always, if some of you guys have played high-level competition, you might find that your practice round's kind of okay. Maybe it's like, 73, 74, but when you tee it up and it means something, and this is when you start to step into really being a competitor, that you got an extra gear. You got an extra level of focus. There's just something that you're able to just dial it in a little bit more. It's because of adrenaline. It's just this hormone in your body that fuels you. So when you're able to channel it in the right way by focusing on breathing and using some strategies, you can channel that adrenaline so you hit the ball farther, bring your balls in tight, and hit shots you really want. So I got some other stuff I want to lay on you, but does anyone have a question or a comment before I go any further? Mike?
I have a question. I'd like to ask, everybody that's on this call, is there anybody that when you're out and you're playing in a competitive situation, Tim talked about you start to feel nervous. The big thing is to recognize a tendency and then have some sort of strategy to deal with that in order to get, the train back on the track. So is there anybody that that really is recognized when they've been playing competitively that, I can feel that I'm sort of losing it here? Does anybody have that sort of aha moment when they're out there playing that they go, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm kind of losing control a bit? Ethan? Yeah, Zabo? Yeah, Andrew? Now, Andrew, if you unmute yourself there, can you unmute yourself for a second?
Yeah.
Now, you put your hand up there. So what was that? What do you feel like if you all of a sudden you feel like you're losing a little bit? What is that? What is that cue? What do you kind of zone in on there to say, okay, this I'm feeling different right now, or this is sort of, I associate this feeling with times before when I haven't done so well, or what is it actually that happens with you? Do you know?
I can kind of just feel that I'm just like not focused and not in it, and I'm kind of just like walking like I don't care anymore. That kind of feeling.
Okay. So, probably what Tim just alluded to there, if you focused on breathing or even, your feet making contact with the ground or something like that, might be a strategy. Now, have you decided on any sort of a strategy that helps you in that situation when you start to feel like that, or does it usually just spiral down?
One thing I do is, I think we talked about this last time, was, it kind of sounds weird, but we think about a breakfast, like what I had for breakfast, what I had for dinner, and then because it kind of then what you're doing right now, right? It kind of just brings you like to that present moment.
Okay, cool. And you use that have you used that strategy at all?
Yeah.
And
I use it all the time.
Does that seem to bring you back in focus then? Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Cougar, I'm going to pick on you. Are you still listening?
I am.
Okay. All right. So for those of you that don't know Cougar's on the men's national team, the Canadian national team. And I think, Cougar and I started working a little bit together when how old were you, Cougar, with the Waterloo team? Maybe 14?
Yeah, 13 or 14.
13 or 14. So
grade 8 going into grade 9, I think.
Yeah. So you've played, high level provincial stuff. You've played obviously national stuff. You've played international stuff. You've played at Eastern Michigan, as well as you've played professional events. And the U.S. Amateur, twice now?
Yeah, maybe 4 Mackenzie events.
Yeah, and then the U.S. Amateur twice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you went through all those levels of golf, how were you able to adapt from one level, like as you went from the big fish in the little pond to the little fish in the big pond, as you went up those levels? How did you deal with going out to a different event and more skilled players every time you go through that? How do you deal with that? Did you find a strategy to say, okay, I know now I'm good enough to be here? Or what was sort of that moment for you when you found out that, okay, yeah, I can really play this game and I can compete at the highest level? Can you remember a certain time that all of a sudden you went, okay, cool, I can play here?
Yes, definitely. But I've before that, I get quite nervous and things start going faster for me. So I've had to figure out kind of how to deal with the higher level events and I've been working on it for like the last couple of years with one of the coaches I have now, Adrian, on the Canadian team with breathing, and it's more of like like more in the stomach breathing.
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And so that's kind of helped me with the higher level events and having to deal with that, because it is a lot more pressure than some of the smaller ones that I play in.
No, absolutely. So have you found with that, when you started to implement that breathing techniques, that have you found that that does tend to slow you down a little bit and get you back to where you need to be?
Yeah, for sure. Because I would be going really fast, and it would be like I didn't even play the round and I wasn't there, and I'd be going so fast that I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I had no control over myself almost. I mean, I did, but not as much as I would need to. So yeah. It helped a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, that what you just described was exactly what happened to me when I first started to compete in the U.S. long drive stuff in the 1980s, 100 years ago. I remember the first time I competed, it was held at the World Series of Golf at Akron, Ohio. And I mean, it was a young kid. I hit a driver that was the first metal wood, one of the first metal woods that was made. It was a 12-degree McGregor metal wood, 43-inch standard steel. That was the big boomstick at that time. And I remember I hit a drive 342 yards that was 2 inches off the fairway. That would have won the semifinals there at Akron. And I mean, I was so nervous that I hit 4 shots and I all missed the fairway, and the closest one was a couple inches off the fairway at 341. And I just remember going back and sitting down and not even really, just like you said, I didn't even realize that I'd even competed.
Yeah.
Like it just went that quickly. And I learned from that time on that to stand there and when you're in the spotlight, just soak it up.
Exactly.
Take as much time as you can. I mean, take as much time as you can. Think about where you are, look around, take in the surroundings, see the other players sitting there, and really focus on your process of doing what you need to do rather than, I mean, I was just a young kid. I was maybe 20 years old and competing with some very seasoned players. And I just got up, teed it really fast, and I just whacked it 4 times in a row. And it was like, I was done in like 2 minutes, sat down, and before you know it, I went 0 for 4 and I was done. But, that was sort of my point where I just said after that, okay, I've got to learn that, yeah, I'm nervous and this is what happened to me. And it really wasn't productive. And I had to find a way to cope with that. So, I mean, that's a great story you shared there. That's awesome. Thanks, Cougar.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim, you go ahead. We hijacked your call there.
No, that's great stuff, man. Thank you, Cougar. Thank you, Mike. So here's the thing. What we're talking about, I'm sure most of you guys think this is the mental part of the game. And that what we're talking about is how we deal with thoughts and all this stuff. When you're playing your best golf, it's a physical game. Our thoughts are just all over the place. They're not even real. I have this saying, feel is real, thoughts are not. Thoughts just come and go. Here's the core piece, and Cougar was talking about it. When you breathe, you're connecting with your body. But it's really important, just a quick note. He talked about breathing into his stomach. When you breathe into your chest, it's going to accelerate your heart rate because you're just at the top rate, and the hormone cortisol is going to start going. When you breathe deep, so everyone right now, close your eyes. Just sit in your chair, close your eyes, don't look at anything else. Here's what I want you to do. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. It could be the sound of your breath going through your nose. It could be your chest rising and falling. Now I want you to move your awareness into your stomach. And just breathe from there. Just allow it. Put your awareness in your stomach and just breathe from there. Okay. And when you're ready, come back with your eyes and open your eyes. Okay, Ethan from Michigan. You willing to answer a question?
Sure. Fire away.
Thanks, man. All right. So what was that experience like for you?
It was interesting, the sensation. So originally I was focusing a lot on my shoulders rising and falling as I breathed. And then when you say transition to the stomach, almost, when you're in that state, for me, it almost felt like a totally different type of breathing.
Yep.
It felt a bit more like almost not natural when you try to just breathe with your stomach rather than letting it flow as you might when you're not thinking.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. What happens there is that there's a nerve. I won't go into it. The nerve goes down, and it actually causes your body to have to go more into a relaxed state. Actually, shoot, I'm sorry, I went there. It actually goes up. As you fill up, it goes up. And it's a very good thing. You might refer to it as your diaphragm. It causes your heart rate to go down, and it just slows everything. It allows you to connect with your body. You may have heard this before. All the greatest singers you've ever seen breathe from it's almost like they breathe from their stomach. It's like they feel like they expand. It's like their ribs, their stomach, everything expands. And when you're breathing well, so just mess with that from time to time. And then what will happen, you can start to incorporate it. So if any of you practice any meditation, work on that. It's called belly breathing, if you will. Here's why it works and why it was good for Cougar, and here's why Mike was having a hard time in his long drive competition. Is our thoughts because what happened is our brains are geared to keep us alive. That's their core job. So they operate from a survival place. So Mike was in a place that his system, his brain, interpreted that as a dangerous place. So the brain says, hurry up, get this over with, all this stuff, because it's operating from this place of how am I going to keep this guy alive? Well, that may work when we're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, but it's 2021. There's not too many saber-toothed tigers around anymore. So what we need to do is use our bodies in a skillful way to slow our minds down. So you were talking, Andrew, that was interesting. We're talking about strategies. So what I would suggest for you is after every round, you journal the good stuff, the bad stuff. And particularly, what are the patterns that happen for you when you, like Andrew said, he lost focus. What used to happen for me, if it started to go, I would start to look for the swing tip. If I, leaving the ball out right, well, what do I need to do there? It's some technical thing. Next thing I know, I'm on swing thought number 27 on the 9th hole, and the day's gone. You can't focus on technique on the golf course. You don't want to be thinking in all that. You want to be in your body. So how do we do that? So first off, what I'd say is, through things like journaling, identify your patterns when you tend to find that you're losing focus, like Andrew said, or looking for swing tips, or you're starting to press, or you're starting to think about getting it to the house. Identify what your patterns are, and then you can adopt a strategy. And a strategy that works really well, again, is to make your body your ally. Make your body your ally, because again, your body's always in the present moment. So one thing you could do is just as you walk, you could just feel your feet. Feel your feet as they go on the ground. You're in the present moment. And if you start to think, oh, I hope I don't three-putt, fine, you're a human being. That's what happens. You're aware that you're thinking. You could go, oh, I'm going to focus on my abs. I'm going to walk and feel my abs. Well, I'm going to walk and feel my breathing. So whatever works for you. But I'll tell you, all the best players in the world have strategies. They know what they're going to do in high-stress situations when they're feeling nervous. Quick story. Jason Day, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, I think, Mike. He came to he won the PGA Championship, right? 5, 6 years ago, right?
Could be. I'm old.
You can't remember yesterday.
No,
you can't remember what you had for breakfast.
I don't even know what month this is.
Thank you, Coach. So anyways, so Jason Day, great player, but he'd never won a major. He was one of those guys, top player in the world, never to win a major. So he comes to the last 4th round. Sunday, he's got a 3-shot lead over Jordan Spieth, who he's playing with, and he's about to win his first major. What does he think? Don't hit it off the planet. Yes, don't think that the best players in the world are all zoned out and chill. No, they got the same wacky, stupid things going through their heads that you and I do. But he had a process. He knew what to do. For him, he's got this thing where he kind of feels like the thought is under his foot, and he presses down and he stomps it out. So he's taking a mental and a physical thing to get rid of the thought, and then he goes through his process. When he had his approach shot, it was a forced carryover, some gunch to the tee. What did Jason Day think? Don't hit it in the gunch. Best player in the world, about to win his first major. Again, he went through the same process, a physical process that put him in the present moment. Again, the body's always in the present moment. So know what your tendencies are when you start to go off the rails a bit and you start to lose it. And just develop a strategy that works for you, which is generally, it could be breath, connecting with the body, use it as an ally. A couple of other things. I think we're going to try and wind things down in 5-10 minutes. Is, again, when you're on the golf course, one thing you can do is just look around. When you find yourself starting to, your heart race, you're starting to think, maybe things are starting to go south on you, look around, look up. Just look at the trees, the birds, the clouds. Actually look at the golf course. Even if it's your home golf course you've played 1,000 times in your life, look at it as if it's the first time you've ever been there. Actually, when this call's over, here's a little challenge for you. Walk into rooms in your house as if it's the first time you've ever been there. And you'd be amazed what you might notice. You might notice that you need to do some dusting too. Okay. Look around. So when you're looking, you're using your senses, your eyes. The other thing to do, you can do, is to listen. Listen to the breeze in the trees, the leaves, the birds, the breeze rustling through the tall grass, your feet hitting the ground, the sound of the club and the ball. Listen, and really listen to your partners. Most of us aren't even present to our partners. If I'm playing with Cougar and it's not going so well, I might be going like, Cougar's talking, but my brain is thinking about what I'm going to do next. I'm not present. So if I'm not present to Cougar, how am I going to be present when I'm actually playing golf? When I'm present, I'm calm. My heart rate slows down. Everything gets a little bit easier. Mike, I got a piece I could say on practice and how to work this in, or do you have anything else you want to address?
No, I was just going to make a couple little points. One was like who gets in that situation that I described, that you maybe you do something and you almost forget you're even present. So when we start to look at even the first tee, I know a lot of players, they get on the first tee, especially if they're not really experienced competitively, is that they can't wait to hit that shot and get off the first tee. I mean, they get up, they tee it fast. Maybe that's, somebody's announcing their name. They're not even done announcing their name and they've knocked it out. Or they just do anything to get it off the first tee. And then once you're halfway down that first fairway, then there's that sense of relief. You take a deep breath and you try to go on with your day. Anybody at all in that situation that you get in there and you just want to fire it out. Okay. So, I think that, I forget who it was in the spring. That might have been Fred Shoemaker, Tim, when we were on a call with Fred. Does anybody know Fred Shoemaker's name at all? Fred is awesome. If you want to look up anything, Fred Shoemaker, he was one of the golf world's great thinkers. And he thinks a little bit differently than mostly everybody. And I think he described it this way. So if you think about, you're a very elite player. Everybody on this call is, wants to play competitively, plays competitively, he's played at a lot of different levels. So, if you think about you're playing at the NCAA level or the college level, you're a pretty darn good player. So when you get on the first tee, why would we be nervous about hitting the ball off the first tee, where we should probably be proud about hitting the ball off the first tee? Because this might be the best thing you do in your whole life in terms of the physical activity. Golf might be your thing. So if you were the world's greatest cellist, you'd probably want everybody to hear you play. If you were the world's greatest painter, you'd probably want everybody to see your paintings. So if you're an awesome golfer, why wouldn't you want to draw more people? You're over at the range, why draw a whole bunch of people over and watch you hit your driver? Because you're awesome at it. Okay, so I mean, get into that sort of that thinking that I'm awesome at this. Why don't I want to show people how talented I am? And you'd be surprised how that'll change the way you hit the ball. Now, I mean, another quick little story. I mean, I give you a long drive story, but one of the other things that you may or may not know is that, I mean, I did ball striking clinics with Mo Norman for 20 years, from like 1987 till he died in 2004, I believe. And I did the last clinic with him as well, like two months before he died. But I did clinics with him. Like, how nervous you think when you're hitting balls, either before or after the world's greatest, the greatest ball striker that's ever lived in the game? Is that some pressure on me when people are paying money to watch us hit balls, or we're doing a clinic at your golf course and we cruise up there and then Mo Norman hits balls for 25 minutes better than any player that's ever hit it. And then they say, okay, Mike, it's your turn. You better have some ability to strike it on the face, or you're going to watch people just after 3 shots turn and walk away. And all of a sudden it's just Mo and I standing there. So, I mean, you have to develop these strategies that say, geez, I'm really good at what I do. And now I want to show everybody how good I am. And then when you get into that situation where you're playing in a tournament, all of a sudden you qualify, and, Cougar's playing the Canadian Open and Tiger decides to come up and play, and he's paired with Tiger, and there's 22,000 people on that hole. You'd better have a coping strategy for that. Okay, so you'd better believe that you're in the right league. So as you start to move from one league to the other, whether it's it's a Tee It Up tour to start, and then maybe it's MJT 2-day events, and then it's provincial 3-day events and national 4-day events, and then, NCAA or professional events where you're playing practice rounds and playing 4-day events. I mean, you've got to believe that you're capable of being in those leagues, or why compete? Okay, so, I mean, always try to believe in your talent. And if you want to compete, believe that other people want to see, because this is awesome, man. People want to see you hit the ball. And then you can take some of that fear and that performance anxiety away from being afraid to hit it, to say, gee, I'm going to wait till everybody gets to the first tee because I'm going to smoke this out there and I want everybody to see it. Okay, yeah. So just a point.
That's a great piece, Mike. And I'm just going to add something. So when I talked about my first time as a AA rep goalie, first time as a first round leader, and in my podcast, I had not been in that situation before, so I didn't know what was happening in my body. So when you watch on the PGA or the LPGA Tour, it's not uncommon. You'll see some, what we'll call a journeyman player. Somebody's maybe won a couple events and suddenly they're in contention Sunday at a major. What usually happens is it doesn't go so well because they're not used to what's going on. Their body's reacting in ways they're not used to. So how do we bridge that gap between performance on the golf course and in practice? We make our practice like performance. So you should always be, you've probably heard this from Mike all the time, is always make your practice so you're practicing with a sense of consequence. You're hitting towards a flag. Maybe you're keeping score of how you're hitting to that flag. Maybe you're playing games like par 18. You should always be practicing with a sense of consequence and moving, because then you'll be carrying the same kind of, say, anxiety or nerves in practice to a game. Here's the last thing I'll leave with you, is that you can use your imagination in practice so you mimic what's happening on the golf course. So you're going to play in a tournament. So before that tournament starts, you could just sit there and you can imagine the announcer saying your name, what club you're at, you hear the clapping, you walk in, you practice a pre-shot routine, you go through and you hit the ball. You practice and practice. You make your practice like the game, and you mimic what's going to happen. so that when you get in that actual situation, it's not such a scary place. You've actually, in a way, been there already, just through your imagination. And you'd be amazed at how that just helps you cool it down a little bit. You just keep your heart rate a little lower. It'll still be going. No way. You can't beat that. But if you practice if you make practice like performance, and especially you can put yourselves in those situations. I mean, you've heard it many, many times. I'll sort of close with this. When you hear someone say that they made a 3-footer to win the Masters or something, he says, I made that 1,000 times in my mind. That shows you the power of actually doing it and imagining and going through it. So when you practice, go through your pre-shot routine. Just don't stand there and rake balls over. Make your practice like your performance. That's it. If there's anything more, I'm totally open to some questions. Mike, you got anything you want to throw at me? I got a bit of time.
I was going to make one more suggestion, is that, you know, when you're practicing, I mean, we practice technically, and you know, kind of the pillars of performance are technical, tactical, physical, and mental. Okay, so there's those 4 aspects that you have to address if you're going to be effective at anything. So when we start to think about the mental process, is what your brain cannot differentiate between real and imagined. Okay, so if, for instance, you're thinking about, you're laying in bed and you got to play a tournament tomorrow, is go through that in your head in bed. And obviously when you're visualizing what you want to do, you want to be visualizing successful outcome. Okay, so you don't want to visualize, well, that first shot tomorrow, I know it's going to be difficult, and there's water on the right and out of bounds on the left, and I don't want to sit there and visualize myself blocking it into the pond. Okay, because again, your mind is just going to draw into that. It's called RAS, Reticulating Activating System, or something like that. You ever heard of that, Tim? RAS.
So yep.
It's what you think of, you become. Okay, so and a lot of times when I go on course with players, no matter at what level, is that a lot of times you have to reshape how you think. So in that situation I just talked about, is you're standing on that first tee, there's out of bounds on the left and a pond on the right. Well, you don't want to say to yourself, I don't want to hit it out of bounds, I don't want to hit it in the water. I mean, that's understood. But the mind doesn't understand don't. Okay, so it's going to see out of bounds, it's going to see water. So probably the more productive way to be visualizing that is that we would say to yourself, instead of I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that, it would be, I want to hit this ball, I want to drive this ball on the left side of the fairway. Okay, so you're starting to see, and again, this is the way Mo thought, and I played with him, and I mean, he thought differently than anybody I've ever seen ever. So he never doubted anything he did. But, you know, he would never think, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do this. Is I want to hit it in the left side of the fairway because I know that's going to leave a good shot into that pin on the right. Okay, so you always want to be visualizing what you want to do, and you can sit and do that. So, I mean, they did some research a number of years ago. There was a downhill ski team, the Canada ski team was called the Crazy Canucks. It was probably in the 80s. It was Todd Brooker, Steve Podborski. I mean, there was a number of guys. So what they did with them is that they actually hooked up EMG electrodes to them while they were basically laying on a sofa. And EMG detects the electrical activity in the muscles. So what they actually did is that if they were skiing at Kitzbühel or wherever the race was, is that they would visualize the race as, because they made enough training runs in it that they knew exactly every turn. So what they did was they visualized the race, and what happened was that as they were visualizing the race, it was showing electrical activity in the muscles that were involved in them actually skiing. So what they ended up being able to do is that their mind couldn't differentiate between actually skiing and them thinking about it, and it elicited the same response to their body. So that as a result, what this was very effective for in downhill skiing was, if we could have our team basically practice the run without going out and having the not being injured the day before the race, if they could sit and visualize what that race was going to run like the day before, they could train while they were injured, B, they could train and not get injured, and C, they would again, when they got to that race the next day, they'd already skied it 10 times that day in their mind. So if we start to visualize how we move around the golf course, just do that as you're in bed, or when you just played the first round and tomorrow's the second round. Visualize all the successful shots you had today. and then, just build on that. Forget about the ones you didn't perform and execute. I mean, we're always going to not execute perfectly, but the ones that you really executed perfectly, try to visualize every bit about that. The shot was into the setting sun, and it was a little downwind, or wind was off the right. This is how my body felt when I created it, and this is how it looked like in the air. So you keep drawing on that positive experience, and your brain learns from that, and it's almost as effective as physically practicing.
Absolutely.
That was my point. Tim. Sorry. My points get long.
That was great.
Does anybody have any questions for Tim? Or, I mean, you can certainly send them to me directly if you had some stuff. If you don't want to do it here, or next time, we see each other, you certainly can do that. I would like to thank Tim once again for taking his time to, sit down with us today. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully, there was some stuff here that you can use in your competitive career, no matter what level you're at right now moving forward, because it doesn't matter. Every level you're playing at has you encounter very similar situations. They all tend to just be on little slightly different scales. Okay, but as you move through from one level of competition to the next, you're going to go through those same barriers, and you have to have ways of recognizing that you're uncomfortable, and then having an intervening strategy to sub in there in order to try to get yourself into the ideal performance state. So again, I'd like to thank Tim. I'd like to thank everybody. My buddy Cougar, I haven't seen him in a while. His hair was longer last time. Good to see Ethan, Michigan Ethan. Good to see you, buddy. And everybody else that's involved with our team. So I know Chris couldn't be here today. He had an appointment he had to attend to, so he wasn't here. But on behalf of the Golf Academy and Tim, I'd like to thank you for taking your time.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's absolutely my pleasure. A couple quick things. So yeah, check out my podcast. It's really fun. It's called Swing Thoughts. The guy I do it with is a riot. He's a stand-up comedian, and he's a scratch golfer, and so it's really fun to do. And I think there's a lot of good stuff in our podcast. I will also just leave you with this, is that there's going to be times in which it's not going so great, whether it be in school or in your life or on the golf course. And you might start to have all these thoughts about how you suck. It's not, and all that stuff is just crap. It's your old belief system, which stands for BS. And we're all going to have that happen. So just know that just because you're a human being, you are freaking amazing. You're absolutely amazing. And we're going to have these goofy thoughts. They come and they go. Just know in your gut that you are an amazing person. And when you can draw on all that stuff, you can be all that you can be. But already know you're amazing.
And just remember the strategies that we learn to try to help our golf game and get us into the ideal state of performance, they're going to help you in every aspect of life. So whether you're nervous about taking exams or a job interview or whatever it happens to be, I mean, anytime your body feels that nervousness and anxiety, the same things you use to calm yourself in a sports situation are going to calm you in real life. So, I mean, you can incorporate that strategy because your body's going to react the same way to any sort of a fear response. So no matter what it is, you say, okay, I feel the same way I feel when I, got this very difficult shot, and I just happen to be going for a job interview. So I know when I do this or center myself or feel my hands on the steering wheel or whatever it happens to be, that I can get myself back to where I need to be. And so, I mean, as a result, that's life skill. It's not a sport related skill. It's a life skill. So it will do you well at every aspect of life.
All right. And even when you're asking a girl up for a date, we're talking important stuff now. Okay.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
well.
guys.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning
Cougar,
in.
did you have are there some questions or?
No, just thank you.
Okay.
For your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're
Thanks,
welcome,
Tim.
guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good to see you. See you guys.